Today we're going to be using the quadratic formula. So to use the quadratic formula, we need to have our quadratic in standard form, ax squared plus bx plus c. So to find the quadratic, it's the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c, all divided by 2a. So let's take a look at our first example. A equals 1, b equals a negative 2, and c equals a negative 8. So if we're going to use our formula, we take the opposite of b, and in this case it's a positive 2, then it's plus or minus the square root. We need to square b, which is negative 2, minus 4 times by our a, which is a 1, times by our c, which is our negative 8, all divided by 2 times our a, which is 1. So then we're going to find the discriminant, and the discriminant is what's underneath our square root. So if I take negative 2 and square it, minus 4 times 1 times by a negative 8, end up with 36, and then 2 times 1 is 2. So then from here, we know it's 2 plus or minus, but the square root of 36 is 6 divided by 2. So once we get to this step, we're able to then separate it to solve for our two solutions. So we can take 2 plus 6 divided by 2, and we can also have 2 minus 6 divided by 2. 2 plus 6 equals 8, and 8 divided by 2 is 4. 2 minus 6 is a negative 4, divided by 2 is a negative 2. So we know x equals 4, or x equals a negative 2. So let's look at our next example problem. Right now it doesn't equal 0, so to put it into standard form, we're going to subtract 117 to both sides. So we really have x squared minus 4x minus 117 equals 0. So a equals 1, b equals a negative 4, c equals a negative 117. So now once we know those values, we can plug them into the quadratic formula. So we have x equals the opposite of b, which is the positive 4, plus or minus the square root. And we take b, which is negative 4, and we square it, minus 4 times by our a, which is 1, times by c, which is negative 117, all divided by 2 times a, which is 1. So now we can find our discriminant. So we take our negative 4, square it, minus 4 times 1, times by a negative 117, which is 484. We're dividing all that by 2 times 1, which is 2. The square root of 484 is 22. So we have 4 plus or minus, and the square root of 484 is 22 divided by 2. So then we can take 4 plus 22, divide by 2, and 4 minus 22, and divide that by 2. 4 plus 22 is 26. When we divide that by 2, we get 13. 4 minus 22 is a negative 18. Divided by 2, it's a negative 9. So x equals 13, or a negative 9. Down here, we need to add 3 to get this into standard form. So negative 3x squared plus 5x plus 3 equals 0. A equals a negative 3, b equals a positive 5, and c equals a positive 3. So to put it in our quadratic formula, the opposite of b is a negative 5, plus or minus the square root. We take b, which is 5, and square it, minus 4, times by our a, which is negative 3, times by our c, which is 3, all divided by 2 times a, which is a negative 3. So let's find our discriminant. So 5 squared minus 4 times a negative 3 times by 3. So we end up still have our negative 5 plus or minus, but now we have the square root of 61 divided by a negative 6, because 2 times negative 3 is negative 6. So now if we take the square root of 61, when we round to the nearest hundredths place, it's 7 and 81 hundredths divided by a negative 6. So we can take our negative 5 and add it to 7 and 81 hundredths divided by negative 6. Then we can take negative 5 and subtract it from 7 and 81 hundredths divided by a negative 6. Negative 5 plus 7 and 81 hundredths is 2 and 81 hundredths, and when we divide that by a negative 6, when we round it, it's 47 hundredths. Negative 5 minus 7 and 81 hundredths is negative 12 and 81 hundredths divided by a negative 6 is 2 and 14 hundredths. So our two solutions are x equals negative 47 hundredths or 2 and 14 hundredths. So this one's in standard form. So a equals 7, b equals a negative 2, and c equals a negative 8. So to fill out our quadratic formula, x equals, well, the opposite of b is a positive 2, plus or minus the square root. We take our b, which is negative 2, and square it, minus 4, times by our a value, which is 7, times by our c value, which is a negative 8. Divide all of that by 2 times a, which is 7. So to find the discriminant, take our negative 2 squared minus 4 times 7 times by a negative 8 is 228. And we're dividing by that 2 times 17, which is 14. Then the square root of 228, when it's rounded, we end up with 15 and 1/10 divided by 14. So we have 2 plus 15 and 1/10 divided by 14, and 2 minus 15 and 1/10 divided by 14. So start solving these two. 2 plus 15 and 1/10 is 17 and 1/10. So when we take that and divide by 14, we have 1 and 22 hundredths, or 2 minus 15 and 1/10 is negative 13 and 1/10, and divide that by 14 is negative 94 hundredths. So those are our two solutions for x.